All right, thank you for joining Battleground, Florida. I am Christopher Heath, coming to you from the Parish Healthcare Podcast Studio in beautiful Orlando, Florida. Today's guest, absolutely one of my favorite people here at Channel 9, and somebody who you're leaving us very, very soon.
I am leaving 3 weeks from today.
That voice you hear is Martie Salt. I'm going to miss you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss any number of people. Maybe not everyone, but I'll miss most.
Do you care to name names?
I'll miss most people. No, I am. It is bittersweet. Absolutely. Bittersweet.
I will say this, when and I've worked at a number of TV stations, and when I first got here, it was 2012, and you and Bob Dobsall were the main anchors at Channel 9, and you want to talk about two unassuming, kind, open, and warm people who just set the standard for what the newsroom was going to be. And listen, we've all seen Anchorman, the legend of Ron Burgundy. We've all seen this image of the anchor who is overbearing and the 3,000-pound gorilla. You guys were just so nice and so warm and so welcoming, and it set such a great tone, not just for when I started, but for so many people who worked here.
Well, thank you, Chris. Over the top compliments. We've just always worked in that environment, and I worked around him for a long time. It just, I don't know, but thank you for the compliments. We've enjoyed everybody that we worked with, and it's just always been a good environment.
Channel 9 has been a very good place for fostering so many careers. I mean, you can look at the networks, and there's so many people that on their resume came through Channel 9. You touched each and every one of them along the way.
Well, I encountered them. I don't know that I had any effect on their careers, but we have several now who are on ABC, we see them regularly, and, it wasn't that many years ago they were sitting right across from me. But as you know, it's been the mantra that if you could go through if you could survive Channel 9, survive, so to speak, as an employee.
Nothing survives a fair work.
It can be a tough place to work. If you can do that, you can work anywhere, because we've had any number of people go from here, and they went to New York, they went to Washington, for those who were on that career path and wanted to do that and pursued that. But gosh, we've had people come through here. It just tons of people.
You are sticking around. You and I were talking about this before we got rolling here. You're sticking around just long enough to get the last holiday party here at Channel 9. We've got a Christmas party coming up.
Yes.
Your last day is just barely after that, which I give you kudos for, because get that last holiday gift card from Channel 9.
You bet. That's right. The last, $25 gift card that we
give? $25 to Publix? Yeah.
$25 to Publix. You bet. I think the party is on Wednesday, and then my party and last day, that's on Friday, December 13th. But you bet. Hey, don't think I didn't look at the calendar, Chris, and figure that out. We've had some great holiday parties. You and I were kind of talking about that before.
We were. Well, because, so you were telling me that years ago, because they do here at Channel 9, they give away, everyone gets a $25 gift card. My first year, they gave $50.
Oh, okay.
And now we've gone down to $25.
Okay.
Well,
And it's still good.
It's still good.
Yeah, no complaints.
No, I know. But and then they also do this weird raffle where they have all these gifts, and they raffle them off. And if your name gets chosen from the bowl, you get a gift.
Yeah.
Which is great if you get one. I've been here since 2012. I am 0 every year.
That's amazing. That's like me and the jury. I shouldn't say. I have been a registered voter my entire life, and I have gotten one jury summons in my entire life, and that was 1983. I have never been called up, ever, never gotten a notice in all those years. And then I know other people who have been called repeatedly. So I don't know what the deal is. But anyway.
Jury service is great. I did it here in Orange County 2 years ago. And I sat in the room.
Yeah.
They give you a time for lunch. You come back. I mean, assuming you don't get called. Now, you get on a jury, that's a different whole thing. Yeah. But, and then the Channel 9 pays you for the day off.
Right. So assuming you're not the one on trial.
Exactly. Well, of course, now that you're going to be retired, they'll probably call you immediately.
Yeah, I'll get called immediately.
Now that you don't have Channel 9 to pay for you to go do that.
But back to gifts.
Yeah, okay.
Back to best gifts.
Okay, so there are terrible gifts out there, and then there are gifts that you just scratch your head and you say, what in Lucifer's deranged fever dream came up with this? You won a cruise pass.
Okay. So, all right. So let me tell the story. Let me tell this. And there are several stories during this particular management era, okay?
Not current management.
Not
if they're
current
listening.
management, not previous management, just to this management going back in the day. So one year, so there was always a grand prize of prizes. And we used to have big holiday parties out at one of the hotels and all that. And lots of companies did that, and it's scaled back for a lot of companies as far as how that goes. But anyway, so the grand prize was a cruise for one.
Ooh, that's a terrible gift.
Now, actually, I did not win that prize.
Okay.
Someone else won that prize. It's just that I have retold the story the most, probably because I think that is absolutely hilarious. I don't even know how the boss in question at the time was able to announce that with a straight face, but he did, and he just thought this was the most generous thing, and this was a great prize, and everybody's laughing. It was a cruise for one to the Bahamas. Can you imagine?
Okay, so if you're single, a cruise for one is like maybe you'll meet somebody, but if you're not single, it's like, well, I mean, you don't really love them that much.
Right. So this prize that I've been getting, now I've been forced, if I'm going to take advantage of this, I've got to pay for my spouse to come if you were married, let's say, or if you were going by yourself. I mean, I can't even imagine getting on the boat by yourself. I mean, but all right. So then another prize I won. Prior to that, I won. What they used to do also was they would have trade outs with various companies that advertised with Channel 9, and so anyway, I won. I had just moved into a little condo of my own, and my prize that year that I won, which was considered one of the grand prizes, was a freezer. A freezer, Well, I had no use for a freezer. It wouldn't even.
You don't
fit.
have like a bunch of buck meat from the season that you've already.
All the buck meat I had fit in the refrigerator I had in the house. But anyway, I won a freezer, so there was nothing I could do with the freezer. So anyway, I ended up donating it to the rescue mission, and then the station gave me like $100 in advance. But the freezer was valued at $800. It was a nice freezer because this is in the 80s sometime. I'm trying to remember. Oh, this was a classic too. Also during the same era of Cruise for One. I don't know if you remember, people listening would remember Burdine stores, which was a Maine, Florida department store, which then eventually became Macy's. Macy's bought out Burdine's, but Burdine's for decades was a Maine, Florida department store. And they used to sell, at Christmas time, they would bring out bears, just white bears and stack them up, for somebody to just buy, one of those $10 quick gifts. And it had the little necktie, the ribbon, and it had the current year of that Christmas. So during the same era of the Cruise for One, they wanted to be sure that everybody's a winner. Everybody's a winner. So everybody, the days of Chris Heath walking away with nothing, that didn't exist.
So
Everybody
I would have gotten
out,
a bear.
You would have gotten a bear,
well,
but
that's something.
the bear was from the previous year. So
Wait.
So if it was 1990, Christmas of 1990, then maybe you got a bear that said Christmas 1989. And I don't know who these people are. But anyway, yeah, those were the days. Great prizes. But, I don't know how you have missed the ball, because I have won. I won a Fire Stick for my television,
TV,
for TV. I won that a couple of years ago. Last year, I won this instant charger pad thing that you just put your phone on, instant charger thing. I mean, they were decent gifts.
No, those are good gifts. Listen, there was one year where
they have good gifts.
No,
they just don't.
No, Channel 9 really does have good gifts.
It's just that everybody doesn't necessarily get one. Yeah,
there are a lot of people who get left out. There was one year I was telling you that Rusty McCraney, our meteorologist, won. His wife, who's a producer here, Sarah McCraney, also won. Coincidence.
Coincidence? Perhaps.
The only time in my career, because it seems like every station I've ever worked at has done the holiday lottery, the Christmas lottery. And the very first year I was in TV, I won a set of luggage. Ooh.
A set of luggage. What's that bad?
Is it?
A set of luggage? Well, I would have been happy with a set of luggage.
It wasn't a good set of luggage.
Well, I mean, unless it was a color you didn't like.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I was 21, 22.
Oh,
what 21, 22-year-old wants a set of
luggage? Yeah,
exactly.
I guess that. Oh, a prize I also won back in the day. It was another one of these trade out things, and so we had an arrangement with. Iceland Air. I get, they advertised on Channel 9, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the grand prize was 2 tickets to,
like what, Reykjavik?
No, I think it was 2 tickets to Germany, like Frankfurt or Berlin or something like that. But it was 2 tickets, so it wasn't a trip.
Okay, so they'll fly you there. You can hang out at the airport and then fly back.
That's right. And so then I go and I'm thinking this through, and I'm thinking, well, I hadn't really, there wasn't a trip to Europe in the budget, I hadn't planned on that. And so even though this is airfare, you do have to pay for everything, once you get there. And I hadn't really planned on this trip. And so then I checked with my accountant, and I said, this is a gift. Do you have to pay taxes on it? And he said, well, yes, you'll have to pay taxes on it. And the ticket, at the time, you could have bought like a discounted ticket, when what were they used to have? I forget what those were called.
Standby or?
Well, it wasn't standby, but it was some kind of fare that they had, low frills fare or something like that they had. But anyway, these tickets, like on the game shows, everything that they give away is priced at the full manufacturer's retail value. It's not what anybody would ever pay for that ticket. Like when they win a car, you would never go buy the car for that price. But when you win the car, you are taxed at that rate that car is valued at by the manufacturer's retail price. So that's the deal with the airline tickets. So suddenly you're paying taxes. If you use the tickets, you were paying taxes on tickets at full price, at a price you never would. Anyway, and for a trip that I hadn't planned, so I gave them back. I didn't go.
The ghosts of Christmas past here at Channel 9 starring Martie Salt. This is like lifting up the veil of Channel 9.
Right,
this is the seedy underbelly.
Yeah, and these are the things that we have laughed about for years.
Oh, there's so many stories. Well, the first year I started here, everybody was telling me about like the year before. Because 2012, I got here right at the tail end of 2012, so the Christmas party had already happened, and they were like, "Oh, we did it over at the Amway Center, and there was the magic and everything." And then the first year, like I'm here, which was 2013 for Christmas. It's here at the station.
Times are tough. Times are tough.
Well, we're scaling back.
That's right. Well, we used to have them. It would big blowout, as many companies did, because this was a thing. I mean, it's all culturally, and but for years we would have our Christmas party would be this big blowout out at one of the hotels in the Disney area. Fabulous hotels and fabulous gifts. And there was a time where employees got cash bonuses related to how many years, what you made, how long you'd been here, and so everybody's bonus varied. But still, it was a cash bonus. Well, gradually over the years, that changed, and but it changed. It changed nationwide. Things. No,
we're not.
Those were
not
good
the
times.
Outlier.
No, and I'm not complaining or anything. That's just the way it was, and the station puts together a nice thing now, and we have a luncheon in the
there'll be a free meal, and you'll get your $25 to Publix.
And I like that. Yes.
Which it's always disconcerting to me the number of our coworkers who spend that $25 at the Publix liquor store.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't even know it was usable there. Okay,
is it usable there? Of course, it's usable there.
I'm sorry.
Of course. Yeah. So okay, but okay. So you've been in broadcast how long?
Stinking 40 years, Chris. 40 years this summer. It's scary. It's scary to think, because there's so many things as anybody can think back to. They can think about childhood. You have childhood memories that are as clear as day. So anyway, I can certainly think of just getting started, how I got started, trying to get even that first job. And so anyway, it doesn't, those memories are clear. It doesn't seem that far away. And then you attach a number to it of 40. 40 years I've been working since that first broadcasting job, and that's scary. It's like 40 years. We are surrounded by a group of people in the newsroom who are not even 40 years old, much less I have worked 40 years.
Yeah.
That's just that is a little sobering.
When you mentioned, I graduated from college on this, in this year, and one of your coworkers like, I was in second grade. You're like,
second grade? They weren't even born.
Yeah, exactly. So you got so how'd you get your start in this biz?
My very first start, as a matter of fact, was not unlike what we are doing right now. It was in radio, and the thing of it was I was just speaking out at a class, a communications class out at UCF the other night, and retelling this story of how I got started. And but anyway, I'd gone to Florida State, and I'd had a scholarship, and I graduated with honors. And I just thought when I graduated, hey, no problem, be getting a job, no problem. And started applying for broadcasting jobs in television was what I wanted to do. And I'd wanted to, I had my sights set on television news from an early age.
When you were applying for jobs, how was that going? I mean, were you sending like a resume, or was it
yes,
was there a demo reel?
In those days, we tape, because we were dealing in videotape then. And so you would send your tape, your physical tape, to a news director of a station, and, hope you got a bite. And I didn't. I just had rejection letters. And I had one tape, too. I had one physical tape, so I needed them to send it back. And how that happened, I don't know, because I did get them back, did get my one tape back, so that I then could send it out to another place. And I got my tape made. You have to have something to put on the tape. Well, I didn't have anything really to put on the tape until I started an internship at a television station in Miami. And that is where, in fact, I really should have paid them a lot of the money that went to the university, because my education in how things worked really occurred in that 3 months period, because they aren't doing anything in this newsroom that we did in school, and this is what you majored in. And but I mean, I think that is that way for a lot of people in whatever field they go into. I mean, you come out of the classroom and then you go into the actual workforce, and you find, my gosh, what were we doing?
Well, you learn the academic side of it. You learn, here's the questions you should always ask on an interview, and here's how you should prepare to deliver a story. And then you go actually work in a newsroom, and it's like, no, go.
Yeah,
go,
right,
go.
exactly. No, that's exactly right. So I mean, as far as something to put on a videotape to even submit, I had to do a couple of things when I was interning. Well, those were my first attempts, so they weren't very good. They weren't getting me any jobs. So long story short, if I had not learned how to type when I was in high school, I wouldn't have even had the job that I got, which was with Kelly Services, for temporary work. And that's what I did, just making some money and everything while I was looking for a job. Finally got a job at this radio station, this country music 5,000 watt radio station in Melbourne. And a guy who had also graduated from Florida State was working there. He got in touch with a mutual professor that we had at Florida State, said he was looking for somebody, and he got in touch with me and said, you want to apply. That is what I did. And when I went to that station, and it was all about, you dress up for an interview and all that kind of thing. And so I dressed up, and my mom and dad gave me the air-conditioned car to drive from Miami up to Melbourne, and I'm all dressed up. And so I drive, I'm following the directions, and you get off I-95, and I start driving, and I'm now on a dirt gravel road, but I see this structure down in the distance, and I was afraid, that's probably where I'm supposed to go. I get closer, and lo and behold, it is. Ooh. And the front windows had bullet holes in them. It was shot out. And this building had never seen a pressure washer in 25 years.
Good thing you had the air-conditioned car.
It's a good thing I had the air-conditioned car. So to tell you the truth, I was so discouraged. My spirits just went down the hole, because I thought, oh my gosh, what I'm afraid of is if I walk in here, I know they're going to hire me, because no place good has hired me. And so this place will, because nobody's been stupid enough to walk in here in the last 6 months. So I drove down to the end of the gravel road, turned back around, and I thought, well, I've driven this far, I might as well go in. So I go in and was interviewed, if you want to call it that, by the disc jockey who was on the air at the time. And he was holding a can of Coors, and he had cigarettes rolled up in his T-shirt. Anyway, they were looking for a news gal. And so anyway, bottom line, I took the job because somebody told me, which was a great piece of advice, Chris, and I've told this many times, that it was better, and this would apply to any field, it was better to have any kind of job in broadcasting than no job in broadcasting while you're looking for a better job, because at least you're able to say that you have a job in broadcasting. You're able, and you're doing some experience, you're getting some experience in the field. So I took the job. I practically paid them to go in and work every week.
Two things here. First of all, is drinking Coors at work looked down upon for some reason? This is news to me.
It wasn't there. It was. That's what they did.
and the second thing is this. I'm getting flashbacks to my driving to my very first job in TV. It was in Sherman, Texas.
Oh,
which if you know where Sherman is,
I do not.
Exactly. And, I drove there, and the station's just out in the kind of middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just this giant antenna on top of it. And I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I want this. But then the second thought runs through my mind.
Right.
What would be worse, getting offered the job or going and interviewing and having them say, you know what? You're just not. We're looking. If I'm not what you're looking for here,
who would fill this job?
I can currently convert oxygen into carbon dioxide. Doesn't that make me overqualified for this job? And so yeah. No,
and there were. I don't know about that job. That Sherman job sounds like this job, but I mean there was no such thing as benefits. No such thing. There was no such thing as overtime. There was nothing. And I was graduating with friends who had gone into business, and so they had business degrees, and so they're going
smarter friends.
That's correct, because I was no good in math. And so they were taking jobs, wherever in Atlanta, this and that, talking about their new hire packages and all this kind of stuff. And so this job, which came at about 9 months after I'd graduated, so I thought I need to take it. And also I was so wanting to get into television news some way, somehow. I thought because I felt I could do it. If I could get in there, I felt I could do it, but it is hard getting in. And I just thought, if I don't push this and try this, as bad as this seems right now, I wonder if I will someday regret down the road that I didn't go for it and I didn't try it, because along the way I was being offered other jobs, like when I was going and being a Kelly employee at temporary services and various businesses all over the place, good businesses, some of the airlines down in Miami, phone companies down in Miami. I was offered public relations positions in those companies. I had a couple of opportunities that if I wanted to go there. So, so all of a sudden I would get the new hire package and income, tripled, quadrupled, in a nanosecond and everything. And I didn't take those jobs because I thought, I really want to try and see if I can do this. So I got that job. That job did exactly what it was supposed to do. I worked there 6 months, and during that time, I met a photographer and a reporter from Channel 2 here in town, working on a story. And the photographer...
We don't refer to Channel 2 on this podcast.
I'm sorry. Okay.
It's the station that will not be named.
Okay. And so they were nice enough. They said, I said, I have a tape. It's not getting me any jobs. It's just for my internship. It's no good. And so they said, if you meet us on a story that we're doing, we meet up at the same time, you write up your version. And the photographer offered to edit it for me, because I had no access to television editing equipment either. And so he said, I'll edit it for you, and then you'll have something new to put on your tape. So that happened, and I was going to submit the tape to a job I wanted to. Knew it was available in Indiana, so I was going to apply for that. He submitted it to the news director at Channel 2, who then called me in for an interview, and I got the job. So that is how I got. So the advice of it's better to have some kind of a job in broadcasting rather than no job while you're looking for another job absolutely worked out and held true in this situation.
And any regrets about passing up those other opportunities? I mean, I know, listen, we don't get a second shot at any of this.
What, like the public relations things?
I mean, because you could be the CEO of Southwest Airlines right now. No.
I have had a terrific career, Chris, and I can't imagine as you know, and what you've gotten to do, the places I've gotten to go, the people I've gotten to meet, the things I've gotten to do, the situations I've been exposed to, I would not have had I not been in this role for these 40 years. And I can't imagine what I would trade it for. I wouldn't want to be the CEO of Southwest Airlines. That sounds like a headache to me.
It sounds like a paycheck to me. But we'll put a pin in that for now. Okay, so let's, but I mean, we all have, those of us that have been in this business, we have those moments that stand out. And I want to ask about two of them for you. One is, what would you say the most exciting thing you've ever done is? And then I also want to ask about what's the most terrifying. Like, what situation did you end up in and you thought, okay, this hasn't gone right. I'm now, and I don't mean just like terrifying, like I don't know how this is going to play out, but like I might be legitimately scared for my own safety. Because we do that in this business. Yeah. We go places and we see things, and sometimes we get out over our skis and we think, oh, I can go here and I can do this. So let's start with the most exciting. I mean, in 4 decades in this business, what's the most exciting thing you've covered?
Well, I have to say, when it comes down to exciting, because I've gotten to, I've had the opportunity to interview hundreds of people, we call newsmakers, whether they're celebrities or political figures, some presidents, movie stars, all kinds of people. I've gotten to do all that, and that was interesting and fun and everything. The most exciting thing I got to do because of this job was fly with the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds.
Ooh.
So I flew with both of them. And that, hands down, is the most exciting thing I got to do. The most exciting 30, 45 minutes.
What was that like? Were you one of the jets?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so they drop you to what? 3-4 Gs? I mean,
we went to 9 Gs with the Thunderbirds. I got my 9G pin. Chris. Yeah. Now you only have to hold it for a couple of seconds, and you've earned your pin. If you can get up to 9 Gs.
Do you remember it?
Oh yes, I remember it.
There's plenty of videos out there of people that the moment they hit that, they pass out because.
Right.
I mean, it's intense.
It's intense. Well, I screamed. Which we have on tape here. So anyway, any illusions that, hey, I just was all a cool cookie
Artie was
and everything.
Like, this is nothing. I've done this before. She was smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. No, it was It was really, it was just fantastic. It was just neat. They do put you, you wear the pressure suits, and they put you, the Thunderbirds went through quite a orientation, like 3-hour orientation before you ever flew on ejection, but also on these compression suits and how those work. And so those tighten up, your legs, tighten around your legs and all this kind of thing. And now when we took off, what he didn't, if anybody's been to the air show, we went through all the maneuvers that they do in the air show, only, the other planes weren't flying with us. We were one single plane, but we did all the maneuvers that they do in the air show. So anyway, if anybody's seen that, so they roll down the runway, very fast. They accelerate very fast, and as soon as they lift off at the end of the runway, they go straight up. So they told me, the guy who prepares you, even though you're wearing this pressure suit and all that, he said your vision, you won't black out, as far as consciousness, or I didn't, but your vision will probably go black. Well, that happened 3 times during the trip because it just went so fast. I guess it doesn't for the pilots. Maybe they have done this. I know they have. Well, I would have been really upset if maybe he hadn't told me ahead of time, but he did tell me what to expect. So so we're going straight up, and and he's accelerating as you're going straight up, and then you're going upside down, and then we're rolling around. We're doing. But he was walking me through it. He said, "This is what we're going to do next. This is what we're going to do next," and all. And then at some point in there, he said, "Are you ready for 9 Gs?" And I said, we can try it." So. So he flew straight up, and this is off of Patrick over the Atlantic, and he flew straight up. And got up to the top, and you're just almost standing still, and then he just maneuvers it and turns the nose down. So you like stall almost up really, you do, because you turn around up at a point, and then went straight down. I don't know how high up we were, but he said we were going about 600 miles an hour, straight down or so. And then at some point we hit 9 Gs, and he said, "That's it." I screamed because what happened was this helmet is very heavy, and the pilots would know, how to handle, everything. They'd know what to expect. I didn't. And so the weight of my head and helmet forced my head down in a nanosecond, forced it down, and it scared me because you can't get it back up until you release the pressure.
Yeah.
And so that's when I screamed.
No,
I was okay, but I
listen,
screamed.
If anyone is going to scream, the moment you hit 9 Gs, I think we can all agree, is an acceptable time.
The astronauts, I think, only do 3 or 4 on the when they were going up in the shuttle.
Yeah, lightweight.
Nothing. Peanuts, Chris.
Bill
Peanuts.
Nelson's got nothing on Martie Salt. No, and that and that ties into. I mean, I covered the military for about 7 years, and I remember doing a set of training for if we had to ditch a helicopter.
Yeah.
And they talk to you about make sure you put your fist underneath your chin so you don't bite your tongue if you have to go into the water, and keep your legs crossed. You don't want them separate because you'll wishbone. Think about that for half a moment.
Oh, it's scary.
And they go through all of that stuff with you to prepare you because they realize you're a civilian. You're not qualified for this.
Yeah, and for the people who actually do that, the military actually do that, they would go through quite a bit of training before they would do that. So then when we do it, it's, this crash course and how you might eject. So I remember him going through this whole thing on ejection and what I was supposed to do. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, if we're ejecting.
If it comes to that, yeah. No, well, because when in 2006, I went over to Iraq with the 4th Infantry Division, and I went over as a journalist, and one of the pieces of equipment that they outfitted me with, the TV station I was working for, was actually a network of stations I was working for. They gave me a monopod, which is just basically a telescoping stick that you put a camera on. And I remember the guy who was outfitting us with gear. He said, if you ever get in a situation, you could use this as a weapon. And I was like,
pal.
I'm like, listen, I am going to be surrounded by the 4th Infantry Division of the United States Army. If it comes down to me using this monopod,
we're in trouble.
Everyone's already dead. It's just a matter of how much longer I'm still alive, 13 seconds or 15.
If it's Chris Heath and a monopod to
we've already
defend
lost.
the 4th Infantry.
Don't worry, 4th Infantry Division. I've got my monopod. We're taking back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, and so that didn't work. But that does tail into what I was also asking about, is like scary moments, because I remember very vividly that same 2006 deployment. We were out with the 4th Infantry Division. We were coming back on a patrol, and the patrol just stopped. It was dead of night, and they were like, we've got a couple things in the road, we're moving, and they moved us to another road. And as we got there, they stopped there, and they were like, okay, the patrol ahead of us got hit by an IED, which was supposed to be the road we were on. And they were like, we're going to stay here and we're going to wait for EOD, the Explosive Ordnance Demolition crew, to come in and clear it out. And I just remember thinking, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah,
sure. I want to cover the news. I want to do this. I don't want to die.
Yeah,
I don't want to get hurt.
Right,
I do want to cover this. So, 40 years, you've got to have found yourself in a position where you've said, how did I get myself in here?
Well, I have not encountered that. I never volunteered for that kind of story, so I haven't been in that situation. The closest one that just comes to mind, right now that I can think of is covering riots in the 80s and some of those instances and 90s, and I mean, that is what it is, and concerned that perhaps the press is a target.
It takes a moment, and that's the thing.
Things can happen in a nanosecond.
Very
so
quickly.
I have been very thankful. I have prayed for safety. I've been very thankful that I haven't gotten hurt in anything, or but as I said, as far as trying to remember tense moments, that's what comes to mind.
Because I've been out at those situations too, where you're covering a shooting, or you're covering something, and you're in a neighborhood that's a little sketchy. And
well, I mean, I certainly had that.
And there's police presence, and you're out there, and you're going to do a live shot, and then you go out there to do your live shot, and you realize the police have left. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, you're saying to yourself, okay, am I possibly a target now?
Right.
Because we like to think of ourselves as being not above it all, but we don't pick
bystanders.
sides.
Yeah, you're trying to think of yourself as a bystander. You're just reporting on what's going on, and so it's not political. The stuff that we were these things that we're talking about covering. it wasn't in that environment. So you just always thought of yourself as a bystander. But certainly there would be instances where, I felt tense because of the physical surroundings. But I've been very thankful and nothing happened.
You've had a very good career. And when I say that, I mean the work you've been able to do, the stories you've been able to tell, the lives you've been able to touch. Not everyone gets that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And I mean, and a lot of people go into this business and they don't have the kind of impact you've been able to have. What stands out?
Well, I have to say that, as I said earlier when we were talking about what are the most exciting things, I've gotten to go places, meet people, do things. I've had challenging opportunities, interesting opportunities, fun opportunities, those things, and, just professionally challenging and all. But I have to say the most rewarding work that I've done came in recent years, and that was with my Blindsided series on the reality of caring for aging parents, which ended up winning several awards, and it really was rewarding work because people still, the first one aired in April of 2016, and it was in the midst of my caregiving for my mom and dad, and people, Chris, still come up to me. I can be at the mall or Publix or whatever, and they say, "Oh, that series that you did on your parents, it either helped me." I've heard this a number of times. We weren't going through anything then, but we are now. We have looked back, because you can find it on YouTube. We have looked back at it. That was so helpful. You got our family talking. We've decided some things as a result. I've had younger people come up who said the same thing, said, "Hey, I saw that and I made my parents watch that," and said, we've got to talk about some things. People who came up and said, and who still do, who said, "It was spot on. You told that was our experience exactly." And the truth of the matter is, Chris, which is why I was so passionate. I was passionate about getting it on for several reasons. One is my family. We were blindsided by this situation when my dad had a stroke at 85, and we were suddenly thrust into this caregiving situation. And to tell you the truth, before that, my mom and dad, very responsible. They had a will. There was I went with them for that. I mean, there's my sister and I in the family, but I went with my mom and dad for that appointment. They, had updated their will. They wanted to make sure we were avoiding probate, so my sister and I didn't have to deal with that. They wanted to make sure there was easy property transfer, trying to make it easy for all that. They had bought and paid for funerals. They had picked out caskets. They had done everything. They thought, we have done everything to make this easy. We want to make this as easy as possible. And lo and behold, the one thing that was never really discussed, which is exactly what happened with both of them, and that was the need that they got into a situation where they weren't able to take care of themselves anymore, and now we're just into a long-term care situation. So I guess what had been planned for was just the idea that maybe they're going to have a heart attack, or something is going to take them suddenly, or maybe they're going to get sick, and then they're just going to pass away at home, and then now all these plans that we have in effect will play, and will work. And that is not what happened. What happened was my dad first had a stroke, and so now we're in a situation of caregiving. He didn't need to be in a nursing home at that time, so it fell on me and my sister to a lesser degree because she's 3 hours away, but we were totally on the same page of everything, to suddenly be caring for both of our parents who were in their mid and late 80s. My mom ultimately lived till she was 96. And navigating Medicare, Social Security, not just that, and doctors, but all of their care, everything, everything.
You're navigating all of this as you are also living your own life.
Well, working. Yeah. So you're working.
But you can't put a pause on your personal life, your professional life.
And this is happening. Yeah, this is happening the country over. And what I say is, people fall in. I didn't come up with this. I read this, but it hit me like a lightning bolt. Everybody is in one of one or more of four categories. Either you are caring for an older relative of some sort, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, some relative, a spouse or something. You are caring for a relative. You have cared for a relative. You are going to care for someone, or you're going to need the care yourself. So every one of us is touched by this situation. And so what the series was about is the assumptions that people have about elder care, such as a primary one is Medicare is going to just pay for everything. Well, Medicare doesn't. Medicare is good. It pays for some things, such as major hospitalizations and doctor's visits, but it does not pay for an awful lot that will be needed, such as just the oversight, the care of someone. People think, oh, you can get an aide and come to the house. No, that's private pay. An aide just doesn't come to the house. Somebody doesn't just come down. You pay for that. Well, where does that money come from? Well, it either comes from the individual, or the family is pitching in, or it doesn't get done. And it's just that was an awakening. People think Medicare pays for assisted living. People think, oh, assisted living, they'll be able to go into assisted living. That is all private pay.
But in a world where people are having fewer and fewer children, like if you've got like 9 kids can share the burden of 2 parents. Mm-hmm. But in a world where a lot of people are having 1, maybe 2 children,
or no kids,
what happens there? And let's say both of those kids, have jobs that don't pay a whole heck of a lot, who's picking up the tab there? I mean, it's all well and good if one of your kids invented Google and can, right, take care of everything. But if both of your kids are just, hardworking people punching the clock and making
this
a
is
decent
happening
living.
In the world. Well, people are patchworking things together. I mean, I either have friends or acquaintances or something, or people who tell me their stories, and they're just cobbling things together because, as I said, Medicare, there isn't, nobody's paying for the care on a day-to-day basis. So somebody is debilitated, they're in a situation, they don't belong in a hospital, they don't necessarily belong, they don't belong in a nursing home. That's for really long-term care where you just are unable to take care of yourself at all. Assisted living falls somewhere in between, but again, it's private pay. It is private pay. There's no public money. In the state of Florida, there's a little bit, but it can take 2 years to apply for it, and when it comes through, it would only cover a small portion of the cost of assisted living. So people are cobbling things together, as I did it to some degree before, we started paying for some people to come in to help. But before it got to that point, I had a couple of friends who were able to help out. I was at work. I have been thankful, and I've said this to our management here, our bosses. I am so thankful for the consideration that I got, and accommodations that were made for me, because there were several times where I got some call just before I was going on the newscast. Sometimes it was the 11 o'clock, sometimes it was the 6 o'clock, and my mom or dad had fallen. They were on their way to the emergency room. I needed to run out the door to meet them at the emergency room to take care of all of that. And thankfully I was here to do that, because what about somebody who has to go to the emergency room and there's no relative nearby to walk them through the process, to talk to the doctors, to tell them what's going on? They just be in there by themselves, and maybe they're not able to communicate the information. My dad had a stroke. He looked as well as you and I do right now, but it took out his reasoning abilities. So he didn't remember his birthday. He couldn't tell the doctor anything about his condition. If my dad, no telling, he could have broken a leg, and the doctor would come in and say, well, how are you doing, Mr. Salt? I'm doing fine. Wouldn't be able to tell him, so that kind of thing. So anyway, so I was there, navigating all that thing. Also, I've told people for several years during those years, I set aside, everybody has to budget vacation time, we're no different. I would budget a couple of weeks worth of vacation time. I didn't go on any trips during those years myself. Really, I didn't take any out of town.
You're burning your
trips.
Vacation time, taking mom to this appointment,
yes, I took
dad to this
right.
appointment.
And was glad to do it, Chris. I was glad to do it because, I love these two people. They needed the care. I couldn't imagine not doing this. But I'm just saying that I set aside a couple of weeks vacation time so that when I had these emergency visits where suddenly, somebody's in the hospital, we have things to take care of, this and that, various needs and stuff, I was able to say and call in and just say, hey, I'm going to use PTO time. I'm going to need to use a couple of days of PTO, and that's what I'm using it for. And you had it to be able to use the same if you were going on a trip, someplace. But now I'm just using it to take care of that. And that was a stress relief, because what if I had burned all my vacation time on trips, and then when stuff like this pops up, then you're all stressed because you think, oh, I don't have any time to take off. How can I take care of mom and dad? Well, I just didn't go on trips for a few years.
Yeah, but at the same time, and we'll come back. I want to actually get you back on to talk about this at length, because I've in this podcast in previous episodes discussed Medicare and Social Security are untenable the way they are. That's more of a political discussion for another time. But your son was fairly well grown at this point.
He was a teenager. He was like 15 and had just gotten his driver's license when my dad had the stroke.
But I put myself in those same shoes and say, if something happened with my parents or my wife's parents right now, my sons are 6 and 8 years old.
Yeah.
So you're in that. So no, I would be in a position where I'm like, do I take my time to focus on my parents or my kids? And boy, is that a choice you don't want to have to make. That is
a choice, but it's going to be there, And I don't know. Every family has to manage it differently. I know that is the way I chose to handle it, because you're dealing with stressful situations anyway, and so I just chose not to really take trips during that time where I'm going to go away for a week or two on a vacation trip, a cruise, out of the country or something like that, because I thought I don't want to be out of vacation days when these situations pop up, and they're going to pop up a lot between two people in their late 80s, early 90s. We're going to be in the emergency room in a nanosecond, and we were multiple times, and then there were stays and just things you have to take care of, and to not have the stress. I didn't want to feel that stress of not having days to take off and then feeling like I couldn't be there when I needed to be there. So it was, hey, those were my days off, and it was fine. And I, never regretted it, never looked back. But families with people, this is all, your situation is being played out all over the place, where people have young children and then they have elder parents. You're just having to figure it out, and if there are siblings involved that can all help, and people, some of them are out of town, and it takes discussions. And it takes some planning.
Yeah, and the wrong time to have the discussion is
at that moment. That is exactly right. And that's when most people are having the discussion, is in a moment of crisis. And that's the worst time to have the discussion. The time to have the discussion is ahead of time, have some kind of a plan. Not that the plan won't have to be altered or changed along the way, but to have some kind of plan of action. Hey, this happens. Who's kind of going to do what? What are we going to do? Who's going to be the point person? Who's going to do this and that? Because it is inevitable. Yeah. It's inevitable.
I want to wrap up with this, and there's two kind of things I want to get from you in the closing bits here. What do you attribute your longevity to? Because 40 years in television ain't easy. And I'm saying that not just because of the grind of our job and the grind of journalism in general, but also too, listen, we all look out at the newsroom and we see a younger version of ourselves,
right?
And we say, "Oh, that person's coming for my job." You've been at the top. And for a long time. So what do you attribute that to? And then what kind of advice would you give to somebody who maybe they don't want to get into TV news, maybe they don't want to get into journalism, but they just want to be successful in life? And they say, Martie Salt was very successful in life. What advice would you give to them?
I had this, I spoke earlier, excuse me, at the beginning of this podcast that I had spoken to the UCF class the other night. And so I imparted some of this very same thing to them. And we talked about TV news and how I got into it and this and that, yada, yada. But I told them, I said, I think the most important thing that I can tell you, no matter what line of work you go into, whether it's television news or whatever line of work you can go into, the most important thing I can tell you is your attitude when you go into work can make or break your entire career. I have seen people talented, smart in this business, outside of this business, who derailed their careers over an attitude. And what does that look like? I mean, to me, some of the things that look like are, first of all, do you approach your job with seriousness, something as basic as just getting there on time, taking it seriously. This job is not an entitlement. You can be replaced. So no job is an entitlement. You can be replaced, and you will be replaced. But are you coachable? Are you teachable? Can somebody tell you, hey, can they tell you without it being couched in just perfect, don't hurt your feelings terms, or can you just take it? Somebody said, hey, that wasn't any good last night. You need to do it differently. Or, maybe it's even, in our case, it's personal appearance. We got a better hairstyle for you. Your makeup needs to be
changed. Nobody's ever told me that, but I mean, let's just. I mean, that's because my hair's fantastic. But I'm sure other people have heard that.
You do have good hair. That's the subject for a whole other podcast, Chris.
We
good
don't
hair.
have enough time here.
We'll talk about good hair. But I mean, are you coachable? Are you teachable? Can somebody tell you that's not the way to do it? You need to do it better. You're smarter than that. That's a dumb way of doing things. Don't do that anymore. Can you do that without getting all rattled and offended? Can you just take the constructive criticism and go with it? Because I've been coached along the way. Nobody's beyond coaching. I mean, the greatest athletes in the world have personal coaches up to the end of their careers. They don't just get to a point and then they coast. They have to be taught. So I say that, don't be arrogant. Don't be arrogant about your job. You don't know everything. You can improve no matter what you do. You can improve. You can do it a little bit better. You can listen. Maybe you don't even agree somewhat with how somebody's saying something or what they're saying with you. Can you just say, okay, thanks? You don't have to be it doesn't have to be a confrontation. Are you pleasant to work with, the people you work with? I mean, just how do you give them consideration? They're human beings. You know what I mean? I mean, it's so basic to me. It's so basic. And when you say, what do I attribute? Well, first of all, the grace of God, because I have thought about this many times, and I've talked with other folks like Bob Opsahl and all, where we did feel just very blessed and fortunate that we got to work with good organizations. There were smart people running the organizations. And so I didn't feel like I was looking over my shoulder all the time. I just felt the stability of where we were working, and I really wasn't working in environments where you were looking over your shoulder all the time. But I mean, it's certainly natural to think that, as one news director said before, these aren't Supreme Court appointments. Jobs that and nobody's job is a permanent job. I mean, you can be the greatest at what you do. Someday, you're not doing it anymore, and somebody else is brought in to do that. So I think you have to have your head on straight, I feel, to say that, it's not a Supreme Court appointment, and you can't approach your job, any job, like that it's an entitlement, and you're good, and you can coast the rest of your life. So anyway, those are just some of the thoughts that I have. But I mean, it has been a blessing that I have been able to work in this business, in a job that I very much enjoyed for as long as I have. And to have had this idea from, junior high on that, hey, I think I'd like to work in TV news. I think I could be good at that. If I could get over the nerves, I think I could be good at that. And that's a whole nother story because the
nerves and the constant swearing. That's the other thing. Martie Salt is known. They call it Martie Salty is what we call it around here. It is just a string of profanity. No, but I will wrap up with this. And this gets back to what I said at the very beginning. And what you just said is so perfect because, as I said, when I first got here, you and Bob set the example for the newsroom. Kind, unassuming, professional. And in so many newsrooms I've worked in so many other fields out there, the people at the top aren't that. They're arrogant, they're whatever. You and Bob were just beyond grace. And it was so refreshing to see that. And, for a reporter coming in from another place, and I know for young reporters that have come in, it is so nice to see people who, by all accounts, could be the Ron Burgundy of "Don't you know who I am?" And are just kind and good, honest people. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris. Well, thank you for this opportunity. It's been great working with you these past few years, watching your family grow. And it's just been great. You're a great addition here, a great asset here. And
I will get you back on. I do want to do one more episode with you before you leave about, or maybe, we'll get you back in here after you've got some free time, and we'll talk about Blindside, because that is worth
a wealth of information there.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Martie.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Martie. All right, Martie has headed off to go do the new news here at Channel 9. And, I'm going to leave this podcast up. We probably won't do one all of next week for Thanksgiving. So this is the Thanksgiving podcast. Enjoy it. 100% non-political, non-controversial, just a really great person, Martie Salt, and some of her life experiences. I am going to try and have her come back on to discuss her series, Blindsided, because it is very important. Listen, if you've been paying attention to some of the Democratic debates and some of the conversations on the GOP side, listen, both sides are coming to an agreement, or at least an understanding, that there is a looming problem out there of retirees and not enough money and not enough people to take care of them. And these are conversations that families need to have, whether it be political or within your family. And this is something that Martie knows a lot about and can definitely shed a lot of light on. So we'll definitely get her back on. Whether or not we get her on between now and when she leaves Channel 9, or I convince her to come back in here, we'll definitely get her back on one more time. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. And I know this episode went a little bit long, but it's Martie Salt. You're going to take as much time as you can. So, have a great Thanksgiving. Spend some time with friends, family. Eat some turkey or, mashed potatoes. Oh, sounds so good. Anyway, have a great Thanksgiving. I'll be back in your feed early December. We'll talk then. Between now and then, have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.